Welcome, dear listener, to a realm where shadows whisper secrets and the veil between reality and nightmare thins. As you navigate these twisted tales of darkness and dread, let the chills that dance along your spine be a testament to the macabre delights we unfold. If these stories ensnare your imagination and haunt your dreams, share. For the more who join our dark descent, the deeper we can plunge into the eerie abyss together. And remember, as you turn off the lights and let the darkness embrace you, true terror lies not in what you hear, but in what you fear.
The first strike cut through the air like a whip, leather snapping against flesh, punctuated by her sharp inhale. It came again, then again, each motion deliberate, measured. Ray's arm arced high, the belt curling like a dark ribbon before landing across her chest. I could see the small shudder that traveled through her shoulders, subtle but precise, not random, not careless. He aimed for control as much as pain. The warehouse seemed to contract around me. Each slap echoed off the walls, off the metal shelving, and the old car hood, creating a percussive rhythm that made my skull throb. I stayed in the shadowed corner, trying not to flinch at the sound, watching how her body twisted, how her breath stuttered between shrieks and shallow gasps. My stomach wasn't rolling today. It felt hollow, emptied of anything useful, replaced by an almost clinical awareness. Ray moved with confidence, a predator who had rehearsed this choreography in his mind countless times. He struck her shoulders now, letting the leather glance across her collarbones, chest rising and falling in uneven waves. The sound hit my ears in bursts, sharp, wet snaps. I noticed the way her arms were taut against the ropes behind her back, how her hands strained slightly against the bindings, tiny tremors betraying her efforts to stay upright. Harlan lingered nearby, smoke curling from the stub of his cigarette, calm and detached. His gaze wasn't on her, at least not directly. He watched Ray's technique like an observer, like a man auditing a project. Deke, standing a few feet off, rubbed the small of his back, eyes narrowing, lips pulled tight. Something feral lingered in his stance, anticipation almost tangible in the air between us. I kept my hands clenched, fingernails biting into my palms. I told myself I could intervene, that some small spark of courage could turn this around, but the warehouse swallowed that impulse whole. The room smelled faintly of old motor oil, leather, and metal, and the undercurrent of damp concrete that made the air sticky against my lung. She cried out again, a fragmented, jagged sound that ricocheted across the garage. My mind pinged with the calculus of helplessness. A 6'2" man, a belt. Deke standing there like a coiled predator, and Harlan with a gun barely concealed at his hip. I couldn't fight this. I couldn't overpower them. I couldn't save her. But my eyes followed every detail, every moment, every twitch of muscle. I cataloged it like a witness storing in the cold chunks of memory. Ray arced the belt again, striking lower, this time across the top of her chest. I noticed how her blouse shifted with the impact, how the motion made her white lab coat flare slightly at the shoulders, catching the faint light from the single overhead bulb. My mind fixated on the contrast, the harsh leather against soft fabric, the calculated cruelty against her restrained form. It was sickening, but at the same time darkly mesmerizing, and I couldn't look away. A phone rang suddenly, slicing through the rhythm. Ray froze, mid-arc, belt still in hand. Harlan raised a hand, silencing him without looking away from the scene. Deke stepped forward mechanically, re-gagging Allison. The sound of the leather settling against her shoulder, chest, and collarbones was replaced by the cold, tinny buzz of the phone, tension coiling in the space between strikes and rings. I stayed rooted, documenting, feeling the dark gravity of this moment pull at my chest. I wasn't brave. I wasn't the warrior. I was the shadowed spectator, the kind of man who had spent a lifetime seeing harm done and doing nothing at all, and that truth settled over me like an iron weight. Yet through it all, I noticed every subtle detail, the flex of Ray's forearm, the recoil of her shoulder, the way her lab coat moved against the belt, the light glinting off the metal walls. Small points of reality I clung to as if they could anchor me against the storm of cruelty unfolding in front of me. The phone buzzed sharp against the metal table. Harlan snatched it up, breaking his stance, flipping it open with a flick of his thumb. "Yeah?" His voice was casual, almost bored, but the muscles in his jaw were tight. The voice on the other end spoke fast, clipped, someone I didn't know, someone with authority I didn't want to challenge. Harlan listened, eyes flicking briefly to Deke and Ray, then back to Allison, still trembling under Deke's hands. "Yeah, we're on schedule," he said, dragging out the syllables, buying time. "Had to take a couple back roads. Don't need anyone tailing us. Precautions are important." I swallowed hard, stomach twisting. But this time, it wasn't the usual churn of fear. It was calculation. Harlan was buying time, and every second he wasted was another second Allison endured. He snapped the phone shut with a sharp click, tossing it onto the bench beside him. 30 minutes. That's all we get. We move fast, you understand? He swept his gaze over Ray first. Ray's grin was wide, sharp, excited, every inch of him brimming with anticipation. Then Harlan's eyes landed on Deke. The thin man's face remained unreadable, calculating. Harlan's voice shifted lighter, teasing now, almost predatory. "You having fun back there? You waiting to take your turn?" My back pressed tighter into the corner. I shrank further, shame digging its claws into me, consuming the air I tried to breathe. 30 minutes. That's all she had. My mind raced, trying to measure time against cruelty. 30 minutes for Harlan to watch, for Ray to act, for Deke to... God knows. And me? Nothing. I was just standing there, cursed with sight, trapped with every second ticking towards some new horror I couldn't stop. The air was still, tense, the kind of thick quiet that made each breath deliberate. I clenched my fists, wishing for anything, some way to change the outcome, but I knew there wasn't one. My heart hammered in my chest, my lungs tight. 30 minutes. That's all I had to endure. That's all she had to stay alive. Deke stepped forward, slow and deliberate, fingers curling around the edge of Allison's lab coat. With a practiced movement, he cut it away, tearing it from her shoulders, then sliced the skirt right up the middle. She shrank back, trembling under the restraints, eyes downcast, ashamed despite the pain. Ray's gaze flicked over her, excitement sharp and predatory. He grabbed another beer, chugging it without hesitation. Harlan watched from his stance, impassive, silent, letting the tension thicken in the room. Deke took the butane lighter Harlan handed him and flicked it to life, the flame flaring orange in the dim light. He pressed the tip against the metal edge of the blade until it glowed, bright and threatening, and then moved slowly towards her. My knees buckled. I couldn't take it. My vision blurred, the room spinning as I collapsed to the floor. Memory hit like a punch to the gut. I was 5 years old again, at the foster home. Bigger kids cornered a new boy. Frail, small, effeminate, easy prey. I could feel their hands on him. I could hear the sharp whimpers, the cruel laughter echoing around the walls. My own hands trembled over my head, hiding, powerless. I had done nothing then, and now, decades later, I lay face down on the garage floor, the taste of bile in my mouth, the metallic tang of vomit spreading in my senses. When I blinked, reality came back with a jolt. Allison's body slumped in the chair, lab coat and skirt gone, tremors running through her frame. Her skin bore fresh, red, cauterized welts along her thighs and forearms. Deke had stepped back to admire his work, a twisted satisfaction in his posture. Ray's eyes were wide with greed and lust for control, while Harlan's jaw was tight, watching impassively. I forced myself upright, wiping vomit from my mouth. My stomach churned, my chest heaving, but something shifted. This time, I wouldn't be a bystander. This time, I had to act. Allison was alive, injured, but alive. And I wasn't letting history repeat itself. Not like the boy in the foster home. Not like my mother. I was done hiding. I would do what I had never done before. I would help this girl. I forced myself upright, the floor tilting beneath me as bile burned in my throat. My hands were shaking, my vision swimming, but I knew if I stayed down, I was dead. Or worse, she was. The room spun with noise, forcing my mind to focus through the haze. Think, Jacob. Think. I looked around. The walls, the men, the tools. There had to be a way. Something. My gaze darted from one shadow to the next, tracing exits, angles, any path that didn't end in me bleeding out. My pulse thundered in my ears, matching the pounding in my skull. Weapons, distance, distraction. I repeated the words like a prayer, and then I saw it. The breaker box near the far wall, a line of switches, half rusted and forgotten, and below it, on the tool shelf, a wrench, heavy, iron, solid enough to cave in a skull. A plan began to form, stupid and desperate, but it was a plan. I staggered forward, one hand covering my mouth, pretending to steady myself. Harlan's voice cut through the haze. "You okay, sunshine?" I gave a half laugh, breathless, forcing a slur into it. "Yeah, I just need a sec. Bathroom." They barely looked up. My hands traced across the wall as I made it to the breaker. Fingers slick with sweat, and I flipped the main switch. The light snapped off. The room fell into black. Someone cursed. Another shouted. Panic bloomed in the dark like wildfire. And then silence, broken only by the sound of my own breath and the distant hum of the lights dying down. The only light came from the moon, cutting a thin, pale beam through the grimy window, spilling over her. Allison. Her frail body slumped against a chair, trembling. Her hair clung to her face, damp with sweat and tears. The moonlight traced her skin in silver. Her arms, cut, raw. Her eyes, wide, terrified, but alive. For a second, everything else stopped. The noise, the fear, the plan. It was just her, broken and human. I crouched down, gripping the wrench tight enough that my knuckles went white. My heart was hammering so loud I thought they could hear it. They can't see me, I told myself, but I can't see them either. The thought made my stomach twist. Then the footsteps came. Fast, close. I held my breath, waiting for the rhythm of movement, the faint rush of air that said someone was near. A shadow brushed past me, and I swung low. The wrench connected with something soft, and then... crack! The sharp, brittle sound of bone giving away. A scream ripped through the dark. Ray, he hit the floor, writhing, cursing. "Who the hell? What the hell's going on here?" Harlan shouted. I froze again, my body tense, my mind a scream. And then a click. A thin flame flared to life. Deke, the butane lighter, danced in his hand, throwing just enough light to paint his terrified face in orange flickers. And in that instant, instinct took over. I raised the wrench, both hands gripping the cold metal, and hurled it like a tomahawk. It spun end over end, slicing through the dark, and connected with a crunch that echoed through the room. Deke's head snapped back, the lighter flying from his hand as he crashed to the floor. The flame went out. For a moment, I couldn't believe it. I'd actually done it. My plan, insane, impossible, was working. But then reality hit. The wrench was gone. The darkness was complete again. My hands were empty, shaking. I was an idiot. My breath came in ragged gasps. I dropped to my knees, patting blindly along the shells, nails, bolts, tools. My fingers brushed cold metal, then closed around the handle of a hammer, heavy, real, a lifeline. And then, bang, bang, bang! The first shot tore through my shoulder, spinning me halfway around. The second slammed into my back, white-hot pain bursting through my chest. The third ricocheted off shelving, whinnying into the dark. I fell hard, the hammer clattering away. The pain was everywhere, burning, choking, blinding. I could taste copper. My vision pulsed with every heartbeat. I wanted to move, to crawl, to fight. But my body wouldn't obey. And as I lay there, I knew this was it. This was the moment I died. But the fear didn't come. Not the way I thought it would. Instead, it was something else. Regret. Not for myself, but for her. The girl who didn't deserve any of this. The one who'd been dragged into a nightmare by monsters wearing human faces. If I could have just gotten her out, just once done the right thing. The footsteps came closer. Harlan's voice, cold, detached, echoed through the haze. "You fucked up, son." The light snapped back on. I blinked against the brightness, pain blooming in waves. My body was failing, every breath shallower than the last. I rolled just enough to see her again, Allison, her face pale, streaked with tears. But her eyes weren't afraid anymore. Through the gag, through the blood and the trembling, she smiled. Not out of joy, out of something quieter. Pride. And somehow, that was enough. Deke's face was a smear of blood and disbelief. He pressed fingers to his broken nose, eyes darting to Ray and the safe. "We get the safe and we get out. Now!" His statement landed like a stone in the room. Harlan didn't care about reason. He snarled and drove his boot into my ribs. Pain flared sharp and raw, and he shoved the heel down into the hole in my back until nausea rolled up my throat. I choked on a sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a plea. "You've got time," I managed, voice ragged. "Kill me, take the safe, run. Your clients are coming. Leave the girl out of this." I put everything into the bargain of a worthless life for her safety. Deke blinked, and for a second, his eyes were clear. "He's right. We've got to go." He looked at Harlan, pleading in his own way. Harlan's laugh was low and ugly. He kicked me again, harder, and every strike folded the air out of me. "Leave her out? You think this is about leaving anyone out?" He spat the words like an insult. "You think small. You die small." Then he walked to the chair. He pressed the gun to the back of her head. He wanted me to watch. Her face didn't crumple. She didn't beg. Something in her tightened and became still. I couldn't name it. It wasn't the broken woman I'd helped into the chair earlier. It was different. Still, waiting. The air around her felt wrong in a way my words couldn't hold. Then Ray screamed. Not a man's shout. A thin, high, tinny howl that cut the room in half. It peeled the hair on my arms up. Everyone's head snapped to him. At first I thought he'd fallen and hit something. Then the noise changed everything. Heat hit the back of my neck like an oven door opening. The air in the room thickened, shimmering like the horizon over asphalt in July. Ray was at the center of it, writhing, eyes wide. The sound kept going, this impossible wail, and the smell came next, sweet, electric, like hot wiring or a furnace ramping up. Deke took a step back, fear etched into his face. Harlan's gun hand twitched. For a half breath, I thought someone had thrown a flare. Then Ray's shirt curled at the edges like paper, and the light along his sleeves grew, first orange, then white hot, and it raced up him with a speed that had nothing human in it. Ray screamed again, a sound that had teeth in it. The men backed away in a circle of instinct. Deke stumbled, hands to his face, and Harlan actually flinched, the first real flinch I'd seen. There was no time to process the physics. The room smelled of burning rubber and something sharper, metallic, like electricity fried on hot metal. Then Ray's body burst into flames. The white-hot heat kissed my face. I tasted smoke. Ray's scream fractured and then stopped, like a record cut mid-loop. The fire extinguished, and he collapsed to the floor, still for a beat. Silence hit after, thick and immediate. The men cursed and swore. The air went thin with panic. Harlan's eyes had a new quickness to them. Calculation replaced cruelty for a second. He backed off, gun still in his hand, jaw working like a man trying to hold a door closed against a storm. I lay there, ribs burning where he'd kicked, breath coming in ragged pulls. My throat felt raw from the hot air, eyes singed from the heat. Allison didn't move. She sat straighter, her head turned a degree, and her eyes found me. Not pity, not fear. Something that said the rules had changed. Ray's scream had stopped the execution. It had rewritten the room, and none of us knew what came next. Deke staggered, holding his bloody face. "I'm out of here," he rasped. His next steps were slow, each one calculated, making a wide berth around Ray's smoldering remains. The air thick with smoke. Harlan's sharp voice cut across the room. "We're not leaving without the safe." Deke gritted his teeth. "Fuck the safe," he spat, suddenly doubling over as a spray of blood and teeth fell from his mouth. He stooped, picked up one of the molars, turning it over in his fingers. Even in the midst of chaos, he was analyzing, noting the odd density, the dark flecks along the enamel. Then it started. He raised his arm to examine it, watching in horror as the skin blistered, reddened, and then split. Pustules formed, then burst, sending a thin green acid ooze down his forearm, eating through the fabric of his shirt. Each tiny stream hissed faintly as it hit the concrete. He tried to shake his hand, tried to flex, but the muscles seized, useless. Gravity pulled the arm down. It hung there limp, a puppet without strings. Horrified fascination took over. He tore at his shirt with his shaking hand, trying to expose his chest, hearted ridges forming and then cracked open with a wet pop. Boils ruptured, dripping fluids that mixed with the streaks running down his chest. His eyes went wide. He was still aware, still thinking. What is happening?" he whispered under his breath, each word strained, wet with spittle. The chaos inside him was mirrored in his mind. Panic flared. There was curiosity, too, a clinical obsession with understanding the impossible. He could feel every pulse of his blood, every twitch of failing muscles, every squeak of bone and tendon as they shifted and lost cohesion. It was as if he were watching a lab specimen under stress, cataloging every reaction as fear screamed in the back of his head. He tried to take another step forward. His legs wobbled violently. His knees buckled, then gave entirely, slamming him to the ground with a wet, syrupy slap. The fluids pooled beneath him, spreading across the concrete with a sickening, gluttonous sound. He rolled slightly, trying to keep his senses, trying to see what was happening to him. Harlan's panicked voice broke through, gun wavering, his hand shaking, unsure. Deke froze mid-motion, his heart hammering, skin bubbling, muscles twitching unpredictably. He was a living observation, a body in revolt, every organ, every limb rebelling in a grotesque cascade. Even as terror overtook him, part of his mind detached, watching, noticing the way gravity pulled the rest of his body apart, the wet, sickly noises as they fell to the concrete. He could hear the gurgle of fluid sliding and pooling, the faint tearing of his own failing muscles. Every sense was amplified. Every second was meticulous, horrifying observation. And then the body gave way entirely. His limbs collapsed, torso slumped in, fluid spreading like a dark, viscous tide. The air smelled of copper, decay, and chemicals. Harlan was frozen, gun half raised, eyes wide. Deke's mouth opened in a wet gurgle, a final attempt at sound before gravity claimed his jaw, leaving only a slick, dark pool of his formal self, his tongue flapping on the ground. From the back of the room, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My own pain, my own bullets, my own weakness, all of it fading into a trembling, horrified fascination. And through it all, Allison remained in the chair, Moonlight struck her face. She turned her head slowly, eyes red-rimmed, cold, calculating. And again, she smiled. The silence in that moment was fleeting. Harlan raised the gun, trembling violently, pointing at her. "Don't do anything, you freak!" he yelled, voice raw and desperate, finger twitching on the trigger. I froze, muscles tight, lungs shallow. And then the cough came, low, rattling, wet. And from his mouth emerged a creature, a long, segmented millipede, iridescent black, skittering across the floor with clicking legs. Harlan's eyes widened, disbelief paralyzing him. The second emergence was worse, a crab-like thing, its glossy shell snapping, claws twitching as it scuttled to the side. It was bigger, more alien, moving with a natural intelligence. Harlan swung the gun wildly, firing at the floor, at the creatures, until the clip was empty. His bullet spent, he threw the gun down, and for a moment, I could see the pure panic radiate from him. Then it started in earnest. His skin rippled and bubbled, as if the very flesh was dissolving from within. Limbs convulsed, backs arched, and from every pore spilled a crawling mass. Millipedes, crabs, things with segmented bodies that clicked and skittered over the concrete. His mouth, ears, nose, eyes, they all produced new soldiers in this horrible crawling army. Each cough, each gag forced more from him. The sound was deafening, a wet chorus of scratching, chirping, and clicking as the creatures collided, climbed, and burrowed in every direction. Harlan bounced, staggering into tables, knocking over chairs and boxes. He'd almost made it to the door, his arms flailing, trying to push the creatures back, to escape the hive inside of him. He tripped over his own feet, landing on the ground. He scrambled again, rising, coughing and gagging, each cough expelling more creatures, the floor beneath him alive with movement, the flailing of limbs that were no longer limbs. It was total chaos. His arm hit walls. He slammed against tables, his entire body propelled by panic, desperation, and the urge to escape. But every movement forced new creatures out, which immediately scuttled over the floor, over each other, and back to devour him. He reached for the door, hand grasping the handle, knees wobbling, only to slide on the puddle of Deke's remains, scraping himself along the edge of the mass. He tried to pull himself up, to stagger out. His body was failing him. His skin, now crawling with scuttling horrors, twitched under his fingers, pushing out more creatures, almost actively resisting his escape. The cacophony of clicks, chirps, and wet scuttling filled the room. Harlan screamed, shrieked, slapped himself, coughed more creatures, spinning in a frenzy, tumbling over overturned furniture, desperately trying to get away. The millipedes, the crab-like creatures, everything spilled from him, forming a writhing, living mass, devouring the remains of Deke's body and Harlan's failed humanity alike. And when he was gone from sight, the room fell silent in the aftermath, except for the movement of the countless creatures swarming the floor. I closed my eyes, waiting for the end, the one I thought I'd earned. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was justice. But death never came. The room hummed faintly, like something enormous had just exhaled. I forced my eyes open. Allison slumped in the chair, her chest rising and falling in ragged bursts, sweat and tears shining in the moonlight. She looked impossibly small, like the weight of what she'd done had drained the life from her. I didn't know how she'd done it, or what I'd just seen, but I could feel it. Whatever had just happened, it was her, and somehow, I'd been spared. Maybe it was divine mercy, maybe exhaustion. Either way, I wouldn't waste it. I bit down on the pain and dragged myself across the floor. Every muscle screamed. My blood left smears behind me. All I could think about was her wrist and those damned ropes cutting into her skin. She still had a chance. I couldn't let her die here. Allison, hey, you're gonna be okay, I whispered, my voice shaking. The words felt stupid, hollow, but it was all I had. I reached her, fumbling with the knots, my fingers slick with blood and sweat. The room pulsed in and out of focus, darkness gnawing at the edges of my sight. I pulled harder. My arms felt like they were on fire. Then suddenly, the door exploded inward. Wood splintered, echoing like a gunshot. 2 men stepped through the smoke, clean suits, pressed collars, and the kind of stillness you only see in killers. No street bustle, no tattoos. These guys were professionals. Their hand cannons were already drawn, matte black and unshakable. They scanned the room, the blood, the mess, the smoldering puddles, and their faces didn't even twitch. One of them muttered, "Jesus Christ." But it wasn't fear. It was logistics. Their eyes found Allison, both guns lifted. The air changed. A shimmer rippled through the room, subtle at first, like heat rising from asphalt, then blinding. Every shadow jumped back as if the lights above flared white hot. I could feel my pulse stutter. There was no time to think, only movement. With what felt like the last breath of life, I grabbed the chair and pulled hard. The world moved in slow motion. I spun her around, putting myself between her and the gunfire. The first bullets hit like lightning, hammering through my back, punching out my chest in hot bursts. I couldn't even scream, just gasps, each one smaller than the last. The final round cracked through my skull, and for a second, everything went white. I fell. I remember the sound, flesh hitting concrete. Then more shots, each one distant, muffled, like thunder underwater. I saw the splinters tear through the chair, through her. Blood sprayed from her lips. She slumped forward. I'd failed. The suits moved fast. One crouched, pressing his fingers against a biometric pad on the safe. The steel door hissed, unlocking with a mechanical sigh. And then everything began to fade. Sound first, then light, then the sharp edges of pain dulling into something soft and infinite. I woke to the faint pressure of fingers tapping my face. Allison? Am I in hell? Her voice was soft and calm. You're not dead, Jacob. I blinked, the world swimming into focus. The room looked the same, yet different, brighter. I sat up, expecting to feel holes in my chest, blood, shattered ribs. But my shirt was whole, my skin unbroken. The pain was gone. What happened? I muttered, running my hands over myself. No blood, no wounds, no explanation. Allison stood across from me, not slumped, not trembling. She was standing tall, confident, dressed in a crisp white lab coat that caught the moonlight like armor. Her hair was smooth, her face was calm. No bruises, no cuts. Behind her lay the men in suits, both of them sprawled on the floor, eyes rolled back, guns still in hand, but not dead, just frozen. Their chests rose and fell shallowly, like they were trapped mid-dream. The safe hung open behind them, its interior gleaming with cold light. Allison reached in and pulled out a clear case, 3 syringes glinting like daggers, each filled with liquid the color of smoke. She held them up, admiring the way the light bent through the vials, then tucked them into her coat pocket. I don't understand, I said. What happened to you? You were bleeding. You were dying. She smiled and tapped the side of her temple. People see what I want them to see, Jacob. They feel what I want them to feel. Pain, fear, hope. It's all perception. I stared, trying to piece together the impossible. She glanced at the men on the ground. They'll stay where they are, stuck in that world that I made for them forever. It's the least they deserve. Her voice softened as her gaze drifted back to me. You, on the other hand? When her eyes locked onto mine, I felt seen in a way that stripped me bare, like she knew every sin, every weakness, every moment I wish I could erase. do better," she said simply. She turned, walking towards the door. Her reflection caught in the moonlight, poised, serene. The memory of what she'd done still clung in the air like static before the storm. I looked around once more. The horrors I'd seen, the melting, the fire, the swarm, her torture. They felt far away now, as if I'd woken from someone else's nightmare. At the door, Allison stopped and glanced over her shoulder. "I'm gonna need a driver," she said, that same faint smile playing on her lips. "You coming?" The question hung in the air. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just pushed myself up, legs trembling, and followed her out into the night. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jay Taylor. I am the narrator of Dante's Disciples and the writer for The Safe, The Girl, and The Darkness. I had a good time with this one, trying to combine elements of Reservoir Dogs as well as the supernatural twist that I love. I wonder about this girl Allison a lot now that I've written her. I mean, what is her power range and what are in those syringes? I really like this universe, and we'll see what type of traction I get on this. I'll take the time to ask you guys to do the usual, like, subscribe, and share, so we can get the message out to more people. Until then, stay spooky.
I ask you, share my voice with others. Let them know that there is warmth in the cold, light in the darkness. My friends, lovers, disciples, this is Dante, signing